In a significant move, India's Supreme Court has upheld the validity of Centre's 2019 decision to abrogate Article 370 of the Constitution of India, which granted special status to the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir. The top court also directed the country's election commission to conduct elections in J&K by 30th September next year.
In a landmark decision, the Supreme Court of India upheld the central government's 2019 move to abrogate Article 370, a constitutional provision that granted special status to the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir. This historic verdict, delivered by a constitution bench led by the Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud, signals a pivotal moment in the nation's legal landscape. Top court's decision has set the stage for elections in the region.
Whether the Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act 2019, by which the state of Jammu and Kashmir was bifurcated into two union territories, the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and the Union Territory of Ladakh, is constitutionally valid, bearing in mind, 1, the first proviso to Article 3, which requires that a bill affecting the area, boundaries, or name of a state has to be referred to the legislature of the state for its views, and 2, the second proviso to Article 3, which requires the consent of the state legislature for increasing or diminishing the area of the state of Jammu and Kashmir, or altering the name of the boundary of the state before the introduction of the bill in Parliament.
India's Prime Minister on his social media platform termed the verdict as historic, saying the verdict constitutionally upholds the decision taken by the Parliament of India on the 5th of August 2019. It is a resounding declaration of hope, progress and unity for our sisters and brothers in Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh. He added that the apex court, in its profound wisdom, has fortified the very essence of unity that we as Indians hold dear and cherish above all else. Prime Minister also gave assurance to the people of Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh that government's commitment to fulfilling their dreams remains unwavering. Government remains determined to ensure that the fruits of progress not only reaches but also extend benefits for the most vulnerable, marginalized sections of the society who suffered due to Article 370. Prime Minister added, "The verdict today is not just a legal judgment, it is a beacon of hope, a promise of a brighter future, and a testament to our collective resolve to build a stronger, more united India." India's Home Minister said that after the abrogation of Article 370, the rights of the poor and deprived have been restored, and separatism and stone pelting are now things of the past. Minister also said that under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, government is committed to establishing lasting peace in Jammu Kashmir and Ladakh and the all-round development of the region. India's Defence Minister also termed it as historic. He added that the decision of the Supreme Court is going to make every Indian happy. By abolishing Article 370 in Jammu and Kashmir, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has not only written a new chapter, but has also given new strength to the unity and integrity of India. Today, Jammu and Kashmir has entered a new era of development. Article 370 accorded a special status to the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir within the Indian Union. It restricted Parliament's legislative powers in respect of Jammu and Kashmir. In 2019, Home Minister Amit Shah said Article 370 was harmful for the unity of the nation. This monumental decision set in motion a series of transformative changes that have had a profound impact on the region, its people, and its potential for growth. Government's focus on infrastructure development has been evident through numerous projects launched in the region. This has not only improved connectivity, but has also made Jammu and Kashmir a preferred destination for tourists.
Next news from the Israel-Hamas conflict. As Israel moves forward with its ground operations in Gaza, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said dozens of Hamas fighters have already surrendered, encouraging more of them to do so.
In the past few days, dozens of Hamas terrorists have surrendered to our forces. They are laying down their weapons and turning themselves into our heroic soldiers. This will take time. The war is still ongoing, but it is the beginning of the end of Hamas. I say to the Hamas terrorists, it's over. Don't die for sin war. Surrender now.
France, Germany and Italy have called on the European Union to set up a special sanctions scheme to target Hamas and consider the next steps in response to the crisis in West Asia. Among the possible measures up for discussion at the meeting are a crackdown on Hamas's finances and travel bans for Israeli settlers responsible for violence in the West Bank. DD India's Sarah Coates joins us live from Tel Aviv now. Sarah, give us the latest from the ground. Can we expect an early end to the hostilities?
Hello there, Tanvi. Look, I'll give you the latest from the ground where I am. It's day 66 now of this war, and rockets continue to be fired into Israel, including here in Tel Aviv. It was around 45 or so minutes ago that a huge barrage of rockets were shot over from the Gaza Strip into Tel Aviv. We can confirm one man has been wounded and a number of homes and cars also destroyed. Now, on the ground inside Gaza, Israeli forces say they are continuing to push it deeper and further into that southern city of Khan Yunis. This is where Israel believes that senior Hamas commanders are hiding, including the head of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, Yahya Sinwar. He is Israel's most wanted man, and Israeli officials have been calling him a dead man walking. Now, Tanvi, in terms of these hostages, Hamas has issued a threat at Israel saying that none of these 137 hostages will return home alive unless there is a complete prisoner swap, with more than 7,000 Palestinian prisoners currently being held in Israeli jails. Now, as all of this happens, Tanvi, around a dozen UN Security Council envoys are today visiting the Gaza border. They'll be on the Egyptian side of that border, and this comes just days after the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned that the humanitarian situation inside the Strip is catastrophic, saying that people could soon start dying of hunger. So certainly a lot happening on the ground today. And look, these comments and this visit are being slammed by Israel's UN envoy, that is Gilad Erdan. He says that it's a disgrace and a new low for the organisation's bias toward Israeli victims of these October 7 attacks, and also for the 137 hostages that are still being held inside the Strip. Tanvi.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. Sarah Coates reporting from Tel Aviv. With the world facing multiple humanitarian crises at present, the United Nations is facing its worst funding shortfall in years. To cope with this, the United Nations has appealed for $46 billion in funding for 2024. Ollie Barrett is in London. He gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Ollie, over to you.
Yes, Tanvi, as you say, the United Nations is seeking $46 billion in funding for 2024 to aid millions who are affected by global humanitarian crises. UN Aid Chief Martin Griffiths says nearly 300 million people, will require assistance due to conflicts, climate emergencies and economic challenges. He also says that other organisations, including the Red Cross and National Red Cross societies, have made their own independent funding appeals. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is facing a day-long hearing in London at the country's COVID-19 inquiry. He's being questioned, among other things, over his role in the Eat Out to Help Out scheme during the pandemic. He began by apologising to victims and said he hoped the country could learn lessons from the pandemic. Rishi Sunak was finance minister as the COVID-19 crisis struck. This comes ahead of Tuesday's vote in Parliament on his plan to revive a policy to send some asylum seekers to Rwanda. Well, DD India's Julia Chapman joins us live now from London. Julia, what have we heard from Rishi Sunak so far?
Well, Mr. Sunak began by swearing on the Bhagavad Gita that he would tell the whole truth during this inquiry and the evidence that he is giving on Monday. So far, we've seen him be scrutinised for some of the decisions that were taken by the government when he was Chancellor, the Finance Minister of the UK, but also about the record keeping and the way that information was discussed and the way that the decisions were made and the lack of paper trail that there has been coming forward from this inquiry at the time when he was in number 11 running the Treasury Ministry. So a lot of discussion about that, but also we are expecting, as this inquiry goes on, for the specific decisions that he was responsible for, the policies that he put forward forward and what impact they might have had on the spreading of the COVID-19 virus. Now, he has been he was one of the main brains behind the furlough scheme, which was providing a subsidy for many people who were out of work because of the COVID-19 pandemic. That has been roundly praised by most people and is credited for keeping the economy afloat. But what we are expecting to see a lot of criticism of today is the so-called Eat Out to Help Out scheme, whereby the government subsidized meals in restaurants for people to go back to them after the first lockdown in an effort to help prop up the hospitality industry, many of whose workers were among the worst affected economically by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, scientists have said there wasn't a discussion about the health impact of that policy. They've privately described Rishi Sunak as Dr. Death, and he is expected to defend that policy. He's so far said that because he was the Treasury Minister at the time, his primary responsibility was to put forward economic arguments to the Prime Minister, who had to balance those considerations with other ones in the round. But he is also expected to talk about his role in advocating for a lighter touch when it came to lockdowns, suggesting in the past that there could have been more of an emphasis on the broader implications of those lockdowns, many of which were very strict here in the UK. And he has insisted that he put forward his concerns that not just health considerations needed to be made, but also mental health, children's education, and of course the economy as well. And as you mentioned, this comes at the beginning of what is expected to be an incredibly challenging week for the UK Prime Minister, as there is a vote in Parliament tomorrow on his flagship Rwanda bill.
Julia Chapman, thank you. Newly elected Argentinian President Javier Milei has made his maiden speech with a warning to citizens to brace themselves for painful austerity measures. Milei says he has no alternative to a sharp fiscal shock to try and fix the country's worst economic crisis, with inflation heading towards 200%. The Argentinian president is calling on his supporters to embrace the ideas of freedom.
I want us to be clear. We are going to begin the rebuilding of Argentina after more than 100 years of decadence. But we must embrace the ideas of freedom. While we have to endure a period of hardship, we will get through. There is no night that has not been defeated by the day.
Polling centres in Egypt are open for the second day of the presidential election, which sees 4 candidates contesting for the presidency, including the incumbent President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. More than 9,000 polling stations are open until Tuesday, with results due to be announced on December the 18th. The election comes as the country grapples with an economic crisis and a conflict on its border. Sisi, who is running for a 3rd consecutive term, won previous elections in 2014 and 2018 with overwhelming majorities. DD India's Naba Mohideen reports.
Egyptians began voting in a new presidency elections on Sunday, and the results of the ongoing elections are set to be announced on December 18th. General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who is the chief of the Egyptian army, is the strongest candidate, competing with 3 other competitors. None of them is high-profile competitor, while only one is the strongest competitor, but he stood down from his campaign last October, saying officials and thugs are targeting his supporters, while the National Election Authority denied the accusations. Egypt is dealing with a severe economic crisis, soaring prices, inflation, and shortages of foreign currency. The new president who will win these elections will deal with priorities. First of it is the economic crisis. The elections right now are set to be earlier than it's expected. It should be set on 2024, early 2024, but now it's earlier than it should be because of the new deal between the International Monetary Fund and Egypt, added to the already existed deal with $3 billion financing to Egyptian projects. General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi became the president of Egypt in 2013 in a crackdown to the democracy led by Mohamed Morsi. It's expected that he will win the new round of elections, which will give the new president who will win this election a 6-year term in power to rule Egypt.
4 people have been injured and a house has been damaged in new Russian missile strikes on Kiev. The strike used 8 long-range ballistic missiles. The Ukrainian military claims Russian forces have also hit the Ukrainian city of Avdiivka, which is northwest of the Russian-occupied Donetsk region and is a key Ukrainian stronghold. Meanwhile, leaders of the European Union and Ukraine will hold a 2-day meeting beginning later this week on December the 14th to decide whether to launch membership negotiations with Kiev.
I came here with a clear message of Ukraine's commitment to do its homework, to open accession talks and move towards membership in the EU. In return, in the spirit of partnership, mutual interests and reciprocity, we also expect the European Union to make a decision that will appreciate the effort made by Ukraine and grant to our country opening of the accession talks.
A very important week for Ukrainian diplomacy. Tanvi, back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Ollie. Ollie Barrett joining us from London. Still to come on DD India Global. Tensions rise in South China Sea. Philippines summons Beijing's ambassador, calls country's aggressive actions against its vessels a serious escalation. And international students wanting to study in Australia would now need to secure higher ratings in English tests as the government plans to halve migrant intake, tighten student visa rules.
Story of Dal Lake of Naya Kashmir.
मैं बड़ी होकर ऑफिसर बनने चाहती हूँ, दूसरी बात मैं पुलिस बननी चाहती हूँ।
बहुत काम आया, उसका टूरिस्ट आया, उसका काम बहुत जलता है।
यहाँ पे तो अभी बहुत कुछ बदला है। यहाँ का जो अभी गवर्नमेंट है, उन लोगों ने बहुत कुछ किया यहाँ पे। 2-3 सालों से यहाँ पे बहुत टूरिज्म आ रहा है।
Has the post Article 370 abrogation change, the impact of it also percolated when it comes to the local fishing community?
हर एक यहाँ पे रुपया 10 कमा रहा है।
यहाँ पर लोग आते हैं घूमने के लिए, फिर वो खरीदारी करते हैं शॉल्स, पेपर मशी, अखरोट लकड़ का, क्योंकि यहाँ भी लोग है ना, रोजी इनकी भी चलती है यहाँ से।
After 38 years, I have seen tremendous change in this place.
हमारा कश्मीर जो है सबसे खूबसूरत डल लेक, शांति है यहाँ पे।
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. Next, updates from COP28 Summit. The Food, Agriculture and Water Day at COP28 witnessed significant developments as nations made major commitments to address climate impacts and also to assist countries in unlocking finance and support for farmers. The day featured major announcements, including the launch of a 2-year work partnership leading to COP30 by the UAE and Brazil. The COP28 UAE presidency, in collaboration with partners, introduced more than 30 new country members of the Freshwater Challenge. COP28's Food, Agriculture and Water Day marked the conclusion of the presidency's 2-week thematic program. As the COP28 negotiations near their conclusion, Executive Secretary of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, Simon Steele, has strongly condemned the use of tactical blockades and strategic landmines in the ongoing discussions.
Areas where options need to be negotiated have narrowed significantly. We are now here to discuss 2 issues. 1, how high is our ambition on mitigation? And 2, are we willing to back this transition with the proper means of support to deliver it? Let me assure you, from our viewpoint at UN Climate Change, the highest levels of ambition are possible for both.
Meanwhile, OPEC's top Arab energy ministers arrived in Doha on Monday for the 12th Arab Energy Conference. The conference is taking place as countries met at the COP28 Climate Summit in Dubai. Several countries, including Saudi Arabia, have insisted that the COP28 conference focus only on reducing climate pollution and not on fossil fuels causing it. Amid tensions with Beijing in the South China Sea, the Philippines has summoned China's ambassador to Manila over sea confrontations. The move comes as Philippines President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. accused China of aggressive actions against its vessels and personnel over the weekend in the South China Sea. China Foreign Ministry has launched a strong protest meanwhile with the Philippines and has urged the Philippines to cease its violations and provocative actions at sea.
非方船只不顾中国海警船警告
China firmly opposes the Philippine side's attempt to occupy Renai Reef and has already made China's solemn position clear to Philippine side through multiple levels and channels. We urge Philippine side to cease its violation and provocations at sea, to stop its unwarranted attacks and smears against China, and to refrain from acts that undermine peace and stability in the South China Sea.
中国外交部已就此向菲方提出严正交涉。
And now we take a look at other stories making news around the world. Australia plans to tighten visa rules for international students and low-skilled workers as the government looks to overhaul what it said was a broken migration system. The decision comes after net immigration peaked at a record 510,000 in 2022-23. The new policies will also end settings that allowed students to prolong their stay in Australia. RM and V are among 4 members of K-pop group BTS who will begin their 18-month military service this week. The 4 will be joining 3 others who have already enlisted. The group will reunite for group activities again in 2025. And singers Alicia Keys, Becky Hill and Tate McRae ringed in the holiday season as they performed at the annual Capital's Jingle Bell Ball in London's O2 Arena. That's all in this edition of DD India Global. Do join us for another edition of the show at 7:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram at DD India Live. You can also find us online at ddindia.co.in. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from my entire team in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.